thank you all for attending the League of Women Voters program on artificial intelligence. There is a blurb we're supposed to read. Whoops. Put this in my pocket.
Just move away from it.
Okay. There's a blurb that we're supposed to read to ask you to not film our programs because we have them available online. And we would hate to have someone use artificial intelligence to distort what we talk about here. So. A couple of housekeeping things. If you didn't hear, there are restrooms around the corner there. We are fortunate today to have two very knowledgeable speakers on artificial intelligence. Dr. Dan Bishop and Representative Brianna Titone, who is joining us on Zoom. Dan will speak first, describing AI's development and highlighting some of the remarkable advances along with some of the risks. After Dan's presentation, Colorado House District 27, Brianna Titone, will present background on AI-related legislation passed in the 2024 legislative session. I ask you to hold your questions to the end of both speakers, and it'd be best if you wrote it on the cards as opposed to raising your hands. It gives us a little bit more clarity and organization so that everybody has a chance to ask a question or has a better chance to ask a question. Let me begin by introducing Dr. Dan Bishop. Dan is retired from CSU, where he taught chemistry and computer science. During a 10-year hiatus from teaching in the early 80s, Dan developed and marketed chemistry tutorial and lab simulation programs using early AI from his home in Buena Vista. He also did custom programming and computer consulting for local businesses. Dan and his wife, Ann, moved to Salida in 2012, where he became an active volunteer as the newsletter editor for the Central Colorado Writers Association and treasurer for the Central Colorado Humanists. He enjoys hiking Colorado's mountains and 14ers and occupies his time with writing and painting. He's published 2 books in a sci-fi series and plans to complete a trilogy with a book titled Saturn Alliance, due out in November, just in time for Christmas, I might add. Dan is excited about the future benefits that artificial intelligence has to offer humanity, and if we humans are intelligent enough to use it wisely. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Dan Bishop.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you all for coming out, and thank you, Kate, for putting me on the agenda this morning and for the introduction. And so we're here to look at artificial intelligence. And so the okay, so my viewing is going to be if we can get around that. This is human intelligence, not artificial intelligence. There we go. Excellent. All right, thank you. Okay, so exactly what is artificial intelligence? If we're going to talk about it this morning, we ought to have some sort of a working definition. And the definition that is most generally used is that artificial intelligence is using machines, which includes computers and computer programs, to mirror or human behavior. And this definition actually was coined way back in 1956 when a group of computer scientists got together in Dartmouth and over a summer workshop, they thought, well, in 8 weeks, we can develop a program that will mirror human intelligence. And so they got to work, and after their 8-week workshop, really the only thing they managed to come up with is a definition for artificial intelligence. We might excuse their naivete because in 1954, just 2 years before, Bell Labs had produced the first transistorized computer that could run 1 million calculations per second. Remember that number, 1 million. 1 million calculations per second should be more than sufficient to produce a machine that could mirror human intelligence. And we'll see in a minute just why that didn't turn out. But let's take a look at artificial intelligence. You might think of it being like a stool that has 3 legs. The first leg is the computer hardware that is running the programs that are fed to it, and computer software are the programs themselves. So it's the software that are coded and doing all of the processing within the computer. And in 1956, what was not understood or really realized to the extent that the data that the computer works with was also an extremely important element. And in 1956, the data was minimal. So for the next 56 years or so, let me add 1/4 leg to the stool if you're talking about robotics. Then we also have to add the mechanics of the robotic device as being part of the AI picture. So for the next 56 years, progress in artificial intelligence progress in artificial intelligence was a blank sheet. And I say that because although progress was being made in developing programs and computers were getting better and better all the time, the programs were essentially what I refer to as dictionary lookup programs. So if you had a program that would do medical diagnostics where the user, the doctor, the patient would type in symptoms and the computer would come back and tell you what those symptoms were due to, it was basically just simply a case where the program, that information was actually written into the program by the programmer, and the information was just being looked up and returned. A physician's desktop reference would have worked just as well. Then Kate mentioned that my move to Buena Vista in the 1980s was based on my creating programs in computer chemistry tutorial programs, chemistry lab simulation programs. And I thought, well, this is artificial intelligence. Well, compared to what we know today, I was just writing essentially dictionary lookup programs because that's all that was available. And even in 1996, when IBM decided to create a resurgence of interest in artificial intelligence, and Deep Blue was the great innovation. Deep Blue, the computer that had a program that beat Garry Kasparov, the world chess champion at chess. And what we know today is that that was just a dictionary lookup program, a very sophisticated one, but still far cry from artificial intelligence. So it wasn't until 2012 when things really began to change. And my own picture is that 2012 was really the beginning, the birth of artificial intelligence. Just a few years later, it became to the public eye through Google's DeepMind program, which taught itself to play the game of Go. Go is an Asian, a Chinese game of strategy that is thought by many to be more difficult than chess. Yet here was a computer program that had taught itself to play Go. In other words, the programmers gave it the rules for the game and then set the system up so that it played itself, one computer against another. And each time that the winner looked over the particular strategy that was necessary for it to win, then both sides used that strategy to play the next game. And so after 1 million games, you had a computer that could beat the world's champion Go players, and it had taught itself. And the key to that is what is referred to as machine learning, a very essential part of artificial intelligence, where unlike back in the early days, we have machines then that can change their programming as they go. In other words, and game programs like this are the easiest ones to envision how this works. But by being able to change the programming, then they actually can learn and in that sense mirror at least one small part of human intelligence. So if we look at what happened to make the difference between the earlier days and 2012, well, first of all, computer technology has been doubling from the early 60s every 2 years. And so if you start with a computer that can do 1 million calculations per second, by 2021, you have a computer that can do 4 quintillion calculations per second. That is a 4 followed by 18 zeros. All right. And so like in 2012, it wasn't quite that much, but you get the picture. You can see that how that was important. And the software also, over those years, was slowly getting better and better. Machine learning was one of the aspects that became incorporated into artificial intelligence programs. But also layered neural networks. In other words, computer scientists were looking at biochemists and biology research to see how the brain works. And in 1956, nobody really knew how the brain works. Well, we still don't, but we have a better idea now. And over those periods of time, those developments in biology, computer scientists were able to try to mirror the kinds of neural networks that exist within our brain, to mirror those within the programs that they write as well. And then the third leg, which you still can't see, the third leg is tell me, what is the third leg? The data, right? And think in terms of the difference in the data that was available for these computers to tap into between 1956 and 2012, 2016, where we have the internet, we have Amazon books, we have Google Worldview. All of these things are in the cloud. In fact, many of you have your own information if you use computers in the cloud. So if that's the case, you have also helped contribute to the vast data archives that artificial intelligence computers are able to tap into. So, yeah, if you can rate that would be great. So, at any rate, those three fundamental legs of artificial intelligence all came to fruition independently pretty much, but by 2012, it was possible to create what we know today as artificial intelligence. And then there's the generative large language models that, like ChatGPT. How many of you use ChatGPT or Copilot? A few of you have. And these tools are available to all of us who have an internet access with our computers. For example, this image of Muffy and Bernie, I love this image. And you can look at that image for hours and not see anything wrong with the image, but it was generated on Copilot. So the text and images that we can produce on our computers are really just quite phenomenal nowadays. You can ask the computer Copilot to write a bedtime story for your 4-year-old granddaughter or 4-year-old child, and it'll come up with a very reasonable, nice. Give it a topic. Like one I gave it was a giraffe and a zebra who are friends in the African savannah. And it came up with a very creative, I'll put that in quotes, interesting story. So, but the actual fact of the matter is that the AI that we have today searches through the data archives and just uses statistics to put things together and then evaluate those to see if they might have any meaning and then feed them out. So a lot of times the information that comes out is garbage. And computer scientists use the word hallucinations because they don't like the word garbage. But there's because of that statistical random interaction, it's not really creativity at all. So I'm very optimistic about AI. I think that AI in the next 10 years is going to have an effect on our civilization that is every bit as great as the Industrial Revolution and or the electrical revolution, for example. And we can see that today already in manufacturing. This picture has 7 robots all working simultaneously on a BMW. Caregiver robots are already available and can be purchased by individuals if you want it. Self-driving automobile vehicles are just around the corner. And finally, foundation models are programs that use all of these artificial intelligence capabilities, machine language or machine learning and neural networks to delve into specific deep databases. And so think in terms of cancer research, the databases that are available to researchers who are looking for the causes of cancer and ways to prevent it. Take one of these artificial intelligence programs and tap into that database. What will come out are 20 or 30 different types of relationships that might have taken researchers decades to come up with. And now they have 20 or 30 possibilities. Some of them will be hallucinations, but some have already been tested and shown to be, wow, this really works. And all of these other fields that I've indicated here, climate change, immunology, alternative energies, energy storage, all of those have the possibility. So last two slides here are, that's my optimism for the future of AI is also modified by worrisome issues. Misinformation, fake images, fake videos. These are all very real. They're in our world today. And the only thing that we have to protect ourselves from these is our own critical thinking. In other words, don't accept everything you see when you first see it. Even if it looks like something that you believe in, check it out first. It might be either a hallucination or it might be something that was purposely directed toward you to mislead you. Another major area that will be a problem are loss of jobs. And not just menial jobs at all levels, surgeons, airline pilots, nurses, caregiving, every area will be affected. And we need to think about policy, public policy that might help to alleviate that kind of thing and avoid the problems that alternative energies have produced in the coal industry. You know, great disruption, a lot of loss of jobs, a lot of human problems there. And one of the ones that I'm most concerned about is military use of autonomous AI, a robot that is programmed to go out and kill and is not necessarily watched over by human intelligence or human being. And leading into our next speaker, worrisome issues are privacy issues, using images and copyrighted text without permission, and predictive AI, like human resources would use a predictive AI to predict what a potential candidate would be like as an employee, and using that information to decide whether to hire someone or not, or health insurance companies predicting who to insure and not to insure, and using AI to make those decisions. All of these types of things can be addressed not by the individual, but by legislation. And so, and we can't really rely on corporate self-regulation. Some may, but I'm not too optimistic there. But legislation with strict enforcement to bring about accountability through civil and criminal liability. This artificial intelligence example here, by the way, was actually used last summer by DeSantis campaign in Florida to convince Floridians that Donald Trump really was not a reliable conservative and that he and Fauci were hand in hand. So it's an example of a real misuse to affect the electoral process. So I'll turn the meeting over to Brianna.
Thank you much. Thank you. That was terrific, Dan. Good introduction, good base for us to have a basic understanding, and I do mean basic for me, for sure, of what all of this means, but we very much appreciate it. I've got Representative Brianna Titone up here, and I'll give you a brief introduction. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here by Zoom. I know you've got a very busy schedule, so we appreciate it. Brianna Titone was elected in 2018 to represent House District number 27 and is currently serving her third term in office. She proudly serves as the chair of the Joint Technology Committee and as a member of the House Energy and Environment and Agricultural, Water and Natural Resources Committees. That's a mouthful to say. It's a lot to work on, so it's a lot of hard work. She has tapped into her extensive academic background in geochemistry, physics, math, and software development to successfully legislate an agenda committed to safety, health, prosperity, and equity in Colorado. She has championed multiple first-in-the-nation consumer protection policies impacting the use of technology, including right to repair and most recently, use of artificial intelligence. Representative Titone was the primary sponsor of legislation requiring political candidates to clearly label advertisements that feature content generated by artificial intelligence. That's House Bill 24-1147. She was also a lead House sponsor of a second successful bill establishing consumer protection for artificial intelligence. That's Senate Bill 24-205. Please join me in welcoming Representative Brianna Titone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate having me here. Sorry I couldn't be in person. If I can share my screen, I think I can. I'm just going to show you one quick little image of this meme of the Terminator trying to find Sarah Connor, but the I am not a robot scheme made it so he couldn't find her. And if it was only that easy to outsmart AI, but it's not. AI is becoming more and more and more sophisticated, and it's our job as legislators to try to keep up and keep with the technology companies. And as you heard in the presentation before mine, there's a lot of upside on what AI can do for us, and that is something that we are very, very cognizant of at the legislature, because innovation and efficiencies and getting us out of the problems we've created as humans, where we can use AI to help us combat climate change, find cures to diseases. All of these things are very important. But there's a lot of things that you can do that can be abuses or misuses of AI. And I'll talk a little bit about the AI regulation, Senate Bill 205 first, just to get that out of the way, and then we can go into the election part. This was the first legislation in the country, even got slightly ahead of the European Union, and it was a larger piece of legislation that was trying to find a uniform policy for this sort of thing, working with different states and the National Conference of State Legislatures, which is a nonpartisan organization that we're a member of, as well as all the other states. The federal government should and needs to put some kind of regulation in place, but as we observe, the federal government doesn't always get the things very quickly, and there's a lot more things getting in the way of them getting to the root of these policies. So we at the states oftentimes have to take a lot of these innovative ideas and start those development processes and those conversations, and then those can be adopted by other states, hopefully in a fairly uniform way, and then eventually a federal law, and the federal law would supersede a state law, and that would be something that applies to all of the states. The tech companies don't want the states to do this because they have a patchwork of different laws that they have to abide by. They have Colorado's law, maybe it's different than Connecticut's or Massachusetts or Virginia or whatever. And as a company that exists in all of those states and even across the globe, it becomes very difficult to comply when you have products that are universally used in all different places. So the policy we were trying to come up with was a bill we could use in other states. And as we hit more and more roadblocks from tech companies' opposition to what we were trying to do, we really kind of scraped down to the foundation of what we could do, and that's what Senate Bill 205 ended up being. It's really focusing mostly on discrimination in AI, and you heard the term hallucinations, and bias is another thing that we talk a lot about when we talk about AI. And Senate Bill 205 has the charge of saying that if you are a citizen of Colorado under this law and you are getting insurance or you're getting health care or there's a legal process or you are applying for a job or getting into college, things like that. There's lots of different AI things that are happening all over the place in financial institutions and when you send a resume, there's different products that companies will buy to screen your resume, to evaluate your risk for insurance, all of these different things that are happening. But the information that's used to train those AI systems is not it's not perfect. Is it ever perfect? Who decides what's perfect? Um, is it biased? Is it not biased? Who says it's biased or not biased? Is that person want the bias saying it's not biased? I mean, I can I can make a bunch of different scenarios there, but the point is that the data sets that we train these systems on, even with the best intentions, can result in bias, and it's something that happens in nature, even in natural systems. There's biases. So if these systems are being trained and have a bias, and we are not identifying what those are, or trying not to find ways to avoid those, we can have consequences to real people being discriminated for presumably no reason. And there's some articles out there. If you look up, it was found that resumes with the applicant first name of Jared, who played rugby or lacrosse, ended up getting the job more than anybody else. And that was like that was that was the magic formula. So I guess if you knew that was the case, you might just put Jared and put you play lacrosse on your resume just to get up there, and you could trick the algorithm. It's so in that case, it's a really bad thing to screen with if that's the only thing that somehow the algorithm is actually bring to the top. So are people who are really qualified not getting considered? Because most of these are screening tools. They're supposed to get the cream of the crop, the people who they're really looking for to the hiring managers, so they don't have to read all of those resumes, which can be quite a lot. So if there's a consequential decision, and that's one of the things we talk about in our bill is a consequential decision, whether you cannot get a job or not get insurance or something that can really impact your life, that you have the ability to file some kind of grievance with the attorney general to understand uh, how that algorithm could have biased against you, and you can seek relief. It's a very basic, bare bones thing. There's not even a private right of action where you can sue directly. And that was something we really had to not include. Otherwise, everyone would have lost their mind and we wouldn't have passed anything. So this was a real basic thing that we wanted to just build on and take into the future. And we have a task force that just started to meet. We're going to be meeting again this month and throughout the year up until February to work with the tech companies to explore this particular bill and the definitions and the provisions and how this bill will impact the industry, because it's an interesting thing that a lot of the tech companies have different definitions of what they think AI should be written in the law as. And that is important, because what's written in the law is what you have to follow. But if your AI system is built on a different algorithm that may not fit that, it makes your business model a little more challenging to comply with, because now that definition isn't quite right. So there's a lot there in that bill that we are still exploring. We've gotten a lot of people that are eager to talk to us and try to get us to exempt things and change things around, because the tech companies, uh, many of the big CEOs have said, we need to regulate AI. And then we come along and we say, okay, let's do that. And then they say, oh, well, not like that. Um, and that's the problem with a lot of these things, is that they say they want something, but then when we actually do it, uh, everybody says, well, can you do it the way we would like you to do it? Because that will really help us. And we're trying to help the people who are negatively affected by it. And what's happened in this fervor of getting AI to market is that companies have been cutting corners and cheating and breaking their own rules and laws at times to try to train their AI to get it to market first. And a big company uh, with lots and lots of money, they're not really that concerned necessarily about what glitches there might be, because they have money to fix those sorts of things later on, as long as they get the market share first. So we're trying to balance how small AI companies, big AI companies, uh, how they all operate in the space without stifling innovation and protecting people. And it's a very, very difficult balance to strike. Um, so I'll talk a little bit about jobs before I go into the AI bill for the deep fakes. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine uh, over the summer, and his son's going to college, and he's a savant with programming. He was showing us programming he was doing when he was 7, and I'm a programmer, and my friend is a programmer, and we didn't even know what he was talking about. He's like that good. And so when I said, well, what are you going to do for college? And he said, probably not programming. And it was a bit of a surprise to me. But then, he said, well, with AI programming and making code, even the best programmers, or even mediocre programmers like me, won't really be someone that's really needed anymore. So he's going to go into more of a hardware and engineering background as a result. So you can already see that colleges are going to have to be making a lot of decisions at this point as to what they teach in their classrooms and what those career choices will be in the future, based on how things are shaking out. And it's moving very quickly. And we're going to have to sort of see how this all um, changes with the job market. But there will be a lot of jobs that are going to be lost, and there will be a lot of retraining for a lot of different people, and there will be some growing pains as we go along with that. So with the great things that come with AI, we will also um, see a lot of other things that will not be quite as rainbows and unicorns. It'll be a bit of a black cloud. So um, deep fakes in elections, that was the bill that was mentioned. It was a very challenging bill, and the big reason why is the First Amendment. The First Amendment is first because it's so important. And we've had so many different things that have been litigated in the Supreme Court about the First Amendment, what your right is, and it's a very powerful constitutional amendment that we have. And that is a big problem that we have right now with this kind of stuff. I like to make an analogy um, to say a deep fake is sort of similar to. So back in the old days, if a CEO, if you wanted to force a CEO to do something, you could kidnap their family and then make him say something on a videotape under duress to say that this merger is not going to go through and change the course of that because there was a bad actor that was trying to disrupt that company. I mean, it's more of a movie plot, but that's kind of if you wanted to have somebody say something they didn't want to say, you would have to force them to do it. But with this deepfake technology now, you don't have to force anybody to do anything. You can create a likeness that looks like them, that sounds like them, that to the casual observer would not be discernible at all from the real person. And then you can make them say anything that you want. And it's becoming an incredibly difficult tool, not just for elections. And we've seen a lot of these things happening um, with some of the election things. I've seen uh, Taylor Swift wearing a Trump shirt, which she would never. I don't think she would ever do. I mean, there's like the Pope wearing a puffy jacket. I mean, it's like there's so many things, and if you're not careful, if you don't see the six fingers on the hand, and that's usually the giveaway, watch for the six fingers on some of these images. Um, you would believe it because it's so convincing. That's one thing, but even beyond that, and even in a darker space, there are teenagers that are creating revenge porn with their classmates and things like that to embarrass their classmates, and it's resorting in suicides of kids because they are being subjected to this. I mean, there are a lot of different things that are really, really evil that can happen that are not the Pope in a puffy coat, that are actually really have a lot of dire consequences, and it's so easy to do to create these things. So this bill 1147, uh, we've mulled over a lot of different ways we could have gone about doing this bill, because we can say we want to ban these communications altogether, but again, the First Amendment and banning communications, and um, this is art. People go to that adjective of saying what it is that it's art, to kind of get around why it's okay for me to do it. Just for an example, in Denver, when they were putting those signs up and RTD stops that were incredibly racist, the guy calls himself an artist and says that that was art, and he's trying to use that to get away with those horrible racist things that he put up, which are inciting a lot of political rhetoric uh, that's already going on. So we have to very, very be careful on that line. In politics in particular, you could say anything you want about me as a politician. Please don't do that. But you can say, that I keep 25 frogs in a terrarium that's not appropriate for frogs to live, and they're dying. I mean, anything you want, you can make up, you could put it on a billboard and say, and I can't do anything to protect myself because I'm a politician. Most people, you can say that that is libel, but that can't be used in the political space. So we have a very uh, low bar here for what's possible to protect this kind of speech for the person who's affected. So we have to try to thread a needle in a way by putting this into the election code as a violation of the election code. And that was what we ended up doing with this, was saying that if a thing is created and you are using this and you can prove that this was out there without a disclaimer, and that's what we're asking for, is a disclaimer, just to say that this content is a deepfake content and it portrays something that may not be real, that you do have some kind of recourse to stop it. The bad news is that you do this stuff, you put it out there, you go through the complaint process, and then by the time you end up saying that you've proved that this person did this and they did it on purpose and you're going to collect your fines, the election's over. Maybe it was about me, and it caused me to lose my election. I won the lawsuit, I can collect my fines, but I lost my election and it's over with, and it was that deep fake that may have done it. So it's not a perfect solution, and there is no perfect solution, and it's because the First Amendment is a very powerful force that we're contending with. I am not an attorney. I'm a geologist and a software developer, but what I have been trying to press a lot of the attorneys is to say, like, at this point in time, we need to really think about how we can get the Supreme Court to adjudicate something else in this space that is not a term of art in law. And is this kind of thing what I call compelled libel? If you're actually making somebody say something that they don't want, you're compelling them to libel themselves. Can we do something like that and say that that is beyond what the First Amendment intended to do? So I think that that's where we need to go, in the direction beyond where we are now. This was something that when we passed this, it was kind of a band-aid on the situation, because we needed to try to at least get people the information that they needed about what was fake and what was not. But the conversation needs to continue, especially in this, with AI being so powerful and so potentially damaging, that we challenge the First Amendment on this sort of issue, to say the First Amendment never intended for this ever to be a thing. And it is now, and we have to adapt to the situation and protect our citizens from something that the First Amendment now could be very damaging to, because it actually is causing a lot of problems for people with elections, with just their personal lives and their own well-being. So those are things that we're trying to grapple with. Some other states have done some similar things with these kinds of deep fakes, and as well as the revenge porn aspects of this sort of thing, saying that you can't do that. And these are the conversations that will keep going and maybe be litigated in the Supreme Court, and hopefully the outcome actually will be a reasonable outcome that we can move forward with. But the thing with AI, and I know we're going to get to questions in a minute, is that the tech companies and the legislature are often kind of butting heads on a lot of these things. We have to work together and be honest with each other about what we're doing in this space. The legislature reacts to what the tech companies do. If they're doing something negative, then we react with a law, and then that stifles innovation, and we kind of go back and forth with this. We need to be at the table together and talk about how we can prevent the things from happening, and move together with some guide rails to take us to a good point in the future. And and it's a little bit tricky because we've already seen a lot of these companies breaking their own rules and breaking rules to try to do things. So I think like the level of trust is not quite solid to my liking yet. Um, but this is something we have to do if we're going to be successful in AI moving forward. And hopefully the federal government can also do it. And just one quick little anecdote I always tell people with AI, if you go back to 2001 A Space Odyssey, and when Dr. Brown asks Hal to open the pod bay door, my standard for AI is that Hal opens the pod bay door and he doesn't argue with Dr. Brown. So that's I'll leave it there, and then any questions happy to have.
Thank you very much, Brianna. That was very interesting. I see people, or Marilyn and Sue have collected a lot of questions, and
If you could
Okay.
pass it down, that'd be great.
and Dan, if you want to come up here, I'm sure there will be people, questions for you or both. Okay, here's a good one for you, Brianna, and Dan should join in if you have insight. I'm most worried about how AI will be misused during the upcoming election. How would I know what I'm looking at is real or not?
Yeah, that is a tough question, and I think Dan really he said it before. If you think that something is too good to be true, then stop and don't share it and say like, oh wow, you have to see this. Um, Try to do some fact checking and do some research and do some searches on what that is that you're seeing, because there is a lot of people trying to keep up with this stuff and do fact checking and debunking, and um, there's websites out there that will tell you, but a lot of this stuff goes viral before people get a chance to even look at it. So if there's something that you think is too good to be true, it probably is, and that's a time where you just kind of need to stop and think about it a little bit.
And the comment about going viral is okay. The comment about going viral reflects the fact that in order for something to go viral, somebody has read something and shared it. So the comment to not share things unless you're absolutely sure of the source and the veracity of the information is important here.
This is a related question. How do you check, how do you know if something is generated by AI? Are there disclaimers or disclosures that people have to put on things, or is that left to specific legislation?
There's some states that require it in certain circumstances, and there are many states that don't. And so there's really not a lot of requirement, and I don't think anybody really cares, honestly, because and this was something we talked a lot about, is that, is it going to be my opponent who's going to create content against me and then put a label on it saying this stuff? I mean, this is not really that's something we're really expecting. But what's going to happen is that someone in Russia or North Korea or somebody who wants to disrupt something or cause a panic or chaos, they don't care about any of our laws at all. And they're just going to do whatever they want. So this kind of content can be made anywhere, all over the world. And even things with disclaimers, you can redo it and take the disclaimer off. There's ways of doing that. So it's a very imperfect process, and it's very difficult to identify things. So we just have to be really mindful at this point, because we don't have an AI detection methodology at this point.
It would be very helpful if we had legislation within the United States at least, and perhaps Canada and Europe, that required watermarks on every piece of artificially intelligent produced material. And by a watermark, it's an identifying feature. And the interesting thing is that companies, this actually works in their favor too, because the process of machine learning uses all of the information that's out there to create the new piece of information that's being presented. And if half of that or a third of that information that's out there is hallucinatory garbage, that garbage gets put into the new element that is being produced. So it is actually to the benefit of the companies to watermark their artificially intelligence produced materials. So it works for both.
And to the watermark, I mean, the watermarks can be deleted, unfortunately. But what I was trying to do in my bill, and the Senate took this out, which I was a little disappointed, was trying to say that in the future, because it's not something that's available right now, but you've probably heard of cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency relies on a distributed ledger blockchain. It's very abstract sort of thing, but the point of a distributed ledger system and a blockchain is to be able to track down something to the source and what it actually is. And that's how cryptocurrency works. That's that you say you have a Bitcoin and
Sorry,
can't get rid of it. Oh, sorry. Did I get cut off?
you did.
Yeah.
Can you repeat?
Oh, yeah. So I was saying that besides the watermark, which can be erased, using blockchain technology like cryptocurrency could be a way of tracing back the origins of a deep fake or some kind of AI created image through a distributed ledger. And it's very complicated stuff. I had this as a suggestion in the bill, but that was taken out in the Senate, unfortunately.
This is an interesting question. Is AI effectively pushing the election system back to retail, in-person electioneering so people can actually know what's real? You know, candidate forums, town halls, those sorts of things. That could be a positive thing from this hellscape.
And meetings to describe AI, here we are.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I go to all those things. I do the candidate forums, I do all that stuff. But I mean, even for me, my district is, not a rural district like out where you all from, but I have a lot of people in the mountains and I can't reach them very well, and I'm gonna use digital
Oh, shoot.
advertising, which are actually that we'll be putting out there. But these are there's a lot of things that we need to still do, and it's harder and harder to reach people because they're not necessarily interested in participating in a lot of those types of things, unfortunately.
That's true. And this is another interesting question. What books shall we read to understand more, and by which authors would you either of you recommend?
Well, actually,
Some off the top of your head.
Can I say something? This is my question. I just went, Fareed had, the Deep Mind guy, Fareed Zakaria had the Deep Mind guy on TV, and he's very worried. And he's written a book about the harm we can get into.
yeah, I think that was Suleiman is the name of the
Yes.
person. His book is very good. Another very good book was written by
Can you repeat? what
Um,
you said?
It's
the
Deep Mind, I think.
it might have been Deep Mind. The author is Suleiman, so you can check it out by the author. Dr. Fei-Fei Li has a very good book. the World IC. And she was actually one of the influential computer scientists that brought imagery and the imagery databases into artificial intelligence. And when I put the date 2012 for the birth of artificial intelligence, a lot of that was because of her work. Hal is out there.
Yeah, exactly. Have we lost,
It's Tish maybe working on.
okay,
I don't know.
She's on.
we'll try.
We can hear her.
Yeah.
we can hear her.
This question I might ask the person to read out. It says, fake